Devotees from Sridham Mayapur. My name is Madhavananda Das, last time I checked. And this is our daily adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. So today we're going to be reading again from the third canto, chapter 29, which are the teachings of pure devotional service by Lord Kapiladeva speaking to his mother. And we're on text number 13, but we'll recite a few prayers first. Narayanam namaskrityam naram shaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet vede ramayanishchaiva purane bhadate tata adavande chamadye chahari sarvatra giyate mukam karoti vachalam bangum langayate girim Yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande bolo hari hari harinka name vandavela parikori be chakadola se chakadolanka padaye manamo rahu nirantare Manu Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Moteru Radha Dava Moteru Radha Dava Moteru Radha Dava Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So welcome, dear devotees from Sridham Mayapur. Today we're going to discuss something further about the characteristics of śuddha-bhakti or pure devotion, and how for devotees the happiness of seva or service and pure bhakti is so great they even have no attraction for liberation. And in this session today we're going to discuss something a little technical from Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where he speaks about two divisions of the five, or as we're going to find out actually four kinds of liberation, which are the two types of divisions of Sukhaiśvaryottarā and Prema-sevottarā. So we'll recite the verse today. Salokya sasti samipya sarupya katvam apyuta diyamanam nibhunanti Vinamat sevanam janaha. Translation: a pure devotee does not accept any kind of liberation, salokya, sasti, samipya, sarupya, ekatva, even though they're offered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Wow. Reading from Srila Prabhupada's purport, which we read the entire purport yesterday, I'm just going to read a little excerpt from it today. When a devotee is promoted to the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, he receives four kinds of facilities. One of these is Salokya, living on the same planet as the Supreme Personality. The Supreme Person, in his different plenary expansions, lives on the innumerable Vaikuntha planets, and the chief planet is Krishna Loka. Just as within the material universe, the chief planet is the sun, in the spiritual world, the chief planet is Krishna Loka. In Krishna Loka, the bodily effulgence of Lord Krishna is distributed not only to the spiritual world, but to the material world as well. It is covered by matter, however, in the material world. In the spiritual world, there are innumerable Vaikuntha planets, and on each One, the Lord is the predominating deity. A devotee can be promoted to one such Vaikuntha planet to live with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Goradra Gana Gocha Goloruharam Goranga Gudatama Gopyada Kopa Vriksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namami Vanchakopadadudhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Bhavani Vaishnaveyo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we take part in this discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam every day because our revered spiritual master, Sri Srimad Gauragovinda Swami Maharaj, instructed us that if you don't do any other sadhana, and that doesn't include chanting japa, which he said better you die than not chant your prescribed number of rounds, but he said if you don't do any other sadhana, every day you should hear Srimad Bhagavatam. If we hear Srimad Bhagavatam every day, then the result will be the shoka moha bhayapaha. We'll have no fear, no lamentation, no illusion whatsoever. So in this section of the Bhagavatam, we're hearing something about the qualities of śuddha-bhakti. Don't think that this is just a very high thing, a very theoretical thing, which I feel very depressed about hearing about. And I just want to hear about, if I just touch a book once and I can go back to Godhead or something, I don't have to do anything. There is some utility to these discussions because by hearing about the qualities of śuddha-bhakti, then we can aspire for it. In the material world, love is characterized by two qualities. It's hoitaki and pratyata. It has a motivation and it has an end. But śuddha-bhakti, in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, is described as ahoitaki, apratyata, and therefore yayatma, superseded. It's fully satisfying to the self because there's no motivation. So in this discussion today, we're hearing about the nature of pure love. We can try to understand it in a perverted way by the love in this material world. But we never hear about someone's love in the material world. Who's going to come to someone and say, I'll love you no matter what you do to me. I'll love you whether you reject me. I'll love you if you never talk to me. I'll love you if you never give anything to me. You've never heard of any love like that. Because all the love here is hoitaki. It has some motivation. I want something. Okay, we're gonna have a business deal. And I agreed to tell you that I love you, but then you have to love me and give me certain types of satisfaction, monetary, physical, mental, and others. But the nature of śuddha-bhakti, the devotees are getting so much bliss and ecstasy in pure bhakti that they don't want anything. And therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches us, na dhanam na janam na sundarim. I don't want money. I'm not doing bhakti so I can get money. Na janam. I don't want followers. To hell with that. I didn't come here to get some position in the society. Na sundarim. I don't want people glorifying me with nice prayers, nor do I want beautiful women. Mama janmani janmani shri. I don't even want liberation, but let me take birth again and again. Bhavatad bhaktir hoitaki tvai. In such a situation that I can serve you. It's an inconceivable thing. This is the nature of real love. It's so pure that it doesn't want anything. And even salokya sashi samipya sarupikatam upyapyuta, even if the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, diyamana means he's offering. Na grinanti. The devotees say, sorry God, you want me to go with you, I'm not going. Na grinanti. Vinamat sevanam, unless you can let me serve you. Unless there's service there, I don't want to go. So we spoke something in our last session on Wednesday. I get a little confused. And how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said that this verse is elaborating on the previous verse where Lord Kapiladeva says, Yatha Gangam Basom Buddho. That the nature of pure bhakti is it moves like the Ganga. It can't be stopped. And so he's making it clear that the devotees, he uses this what's called Kayamutya Nyaya, or the logic of what to speak of. The devotees who have pure bhakti, they don't even want liberation. And what to speak of any material benediction. So we spoke something about these 5 different types of liberation and how the devotees of the Lord, they're not interested in that. Rather, the Prachetas, they tell Lord Vishnu, Tulayama Lavena, Pinasragamna Punarbhavam, Bhagavat Sangi Sangasha Martinam Kimutasi Saha. I don't want this liberation. I don't want to go to the heavenly planets. I don't care where I go. I just want to be with the devotees. And Rupa Goswami and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, we spoke something how the devotees are like makara fish. Makara is the king of all the fishes in 3 ways. First, because they're joyfully swimming in the ocean of Bhakti Ras. That Bhakti Ras is the final shelter of all the rivers of liberation and is full of the highest bliss. Secondly, they ignore liberation, which is compared to a river. Who cares about the insignificant river? I am playing in the ocean of Bhakti Ras. So who cares about this Aslita Mukti Nadikan, this nadi, or this river of mukti, liberation? I'm playing in the ocean of Bhakti Ras. And thirdly, because they're in the ocean of Bhakti Ras and they're swimming very, very deep, Paribhuta Kala Jalabiya, they have no fear. They're not afraid of the fishermen's nets because those nets are only in the shallow water. So in this session today, we want again to turn to Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, but from the 2nd chapter of the 1st section, wherein he quotes the same verse that we're speaking on today, and then he elaborates on it. So we want to hear Rupa Goswami's explanation of divine love, because Rupa Goswami is Rupa Manjari, and he's therefore Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishta. He understands the Mano Bhishta, the inner mind of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He knows real love because he's an intimate servant of Srimati Radharani. So Rupa Goswami says, Atra tyaja yait yokta mukti pancha vidapi chet salokya distatapyatra bhaktya nati virudyate. He says, although all 5 types of mukti, all 5 types of liberation, salokya, sarshti, samipya, sarupya, and ekatva, or living on the same planet with the Lord, that's pretty good. Sarshti, having the same opulence, same kind of wealth, you get the same credit card that the Lord has. Samipya, you become a personal associate of the Lord, life is very good. Sarupya, you get a form like the Lord. That's off the charts. Or ekatva, you become one with God. But Lord Kapiladeva says that for the devotees, they don't care. Diyamanam nagrinanti, they won't accept it unless there's some service. So Rupa Goswami elaborates that. He says, okay, although these 5 types of mukti has been described as worthy of rejection, 4 of them, being on the same planet, having the same wealth, being an associate, having the same form, are not so contradictory to bhakti. Nati virudyate. Bhakti, nati virudyate. They're not so contradictory. Jiva Goswami, in his commentary in this verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says that although these 4 are not extremely contradictory to bhakti, they are contrary to a small degree, since they're accomplished with some unfavorable attitude. This is not just a philosophical discussion. This is not just a religious discussion. This is a discussion about love. Let's use a mundane example. Your wife says, you don't really understand me, because you have some little contrary mood. You have a little contrary thing to her, because love is a very subtle thing we see even in the material world. So Jiva Goswami is explaining that if the devotee has a desire, it's not that these 4 types of liberation are bad, but if a devotee has a desire for these 4, independent of the desire to please the Lord, he may accept it, okay, I'll go with you, I'll be on your planet, I'll even have the same wealth as you, whatever, because then I can serve you in a better way. If their primary motivation is service, not just because they want a position in the spiritual world or whatever, but if they have a desire for these 4, independent of the desire to please the Lord, then that bhakti is no longer anyabhilasita shunya. It has some abhilas, it has some motivation. And Rupa Goswami in the 11th verse of the first chapter of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, a verse which many Vaishnavas have said is the Charana Shloka, or the most important verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He says that anyabhilasita shunyam, the nature of this love, the first thing he says is anyabhilas shunya, there's no separate desire from the Lord. So he establishes that right away. And this verse we're hearing today elaborates more upon that. How exactly is the devotees don't want anything separate from the Lord. They don't even want liberation. So 4 types of liberation are mentioned particularly here, although there's 5 types. But that 5th type for a devotee is completely rejected. Prabodhananda Saraswati gives a very beautiful description in his Chaitanya Chandamrita. Kaivalyam narakayate tridasapur akasa pushpayate durantendriya kala sarpa patali prodkata dhamstrayate vishvam purna sukhayate vidimahin dradischakitayate yakarunya kataksha vaibhavavatam tam godameva stuma. For a devotee who gets just the sidelong glance, the karunya kataksha, that karunya kataksha means that the merciful sidelong glance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then for him, kaivalyam narakadate, liberation, the ecstasy, the happiness of Brahmananda, of merging in the Brahman effulgence, appears like narak, like hell. They don't want anything to do with that. Tridasapura kasha pushpayate. And the happiness in the heavenly planets, that seems like some phantasmagoria. No, that ain't going to work. Forget it. That's really nothing there. Durdantendriya kala sarpa. And the senses, which are durda, were very, very formidable. Durdanta indriya, the senses, the indriya, which are like kala sarp, poisonous snakes. He says, damstrayate, prokata damstrayate, their teeth has been removed. Sometimes in India, we see, I've been places and you're walking down the street and all of a sudden some guy comes up and sticks a cobra in your face. Seriously. It happens, like it's happened in Jagannath Puri. Different places, they have this basket and it startles you a little bit. I don't know if you've ever had a cobra stuck in your face before. It's not the most pleasant thing. They're not worried about you suing them or beating them up because you're going to get bitten by the cobra, because the cobra has no teeth. They took it out. But still, it creates some excitement. Vishvam puna sukhayate vidimahendra dischaki. He says that this material world, for someone who has the glance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this Vishva, then purna sukhayate, it becomes completely happy. This material world then becomes like Vaikuntha if you just get the glance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when someone may come and say, if you chant your rounds every day, Prabhu, And if you do book distribution, then you may get to have a position. You may become a GBC. You may become a sannyasi, a temple president. You might become a landscape architect. You might become Lord Brahma or Indra in the heavenly planets. But Prabodhananda Saraswati wrinkles up his nose, and he says, Mahendradi Chakitiyate. Their position is like an insect. Who gives a damn about an insect? Being Lord Brahma, being Indra, that's like being an insect. I have no desire for that. So this Kaivalya Mukti is rejected by the devotees. And as we heard on Wednesday, Hanuman, he says, I have no desire for any kind of liberation in which I forget that you're the master and I'm your servant. So now, as we mentioned in the beginning, Rupa Goswami, in elaborating on this very wonderful topic, very, very interesting topic, he further explains that of these four types of liberation, okay, we've rejected Kaivalya, because Kaivalya Mukti, there's no fragrance, there's no scent, even of service, and therefore Kaivalyam Narakayate. Prabodhananda Saraswati says it's like hell. I don't want to go to hell and have some position where there's no service. Service is my life. Service is everything. So then Rupa says, okay, we've got four types of liberation which are left. Now, of these four types of liberation, he again divides them into two different categories. He says, again in the second chapter of this first section of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, text 56, he says, Sukhaiśvaryottarā and Prema-sevottarā salokya dir dvida tatra naja seva jusam mata. So there are two varieties of these four types of liberation. One is called Sukhaiśvaryottarā. Sukh means happiness, and Aishvarya means some opulence. So it's a liberation where the individual has this personal desire for his own pleasure that, man, if I go to Vaikuntha Lok, I can have unlimited girlfriends, I can have all kinds of wealth, I can eat the most opulent, nice things. Sukhaiśvaryottarā. So they're desiring that liberation because they'll get their own personal pleasure. The second type of variety, he says, is Prema-sevottarā. Liberation in which the dominant desire is to serve the Lord for the Lord's pleasure. So of these two varieties now, Sukhaiśvaryottarā, or this Aishvarya-uttara, the happiness of Sukh, of having all this opulence of being in Vaikuntha with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just like sometimes somebody wants to be your friend because you're a wealthy person. Bill Gates has a problem. There's a lot of people who want to be his friend because they want to try to enjoy the wealth and opulence that Bill Gates has. But there's other people, perhaps, hopefully, for his sake, who just like Bill Gates because they think he's just a cool guy, and I'm not going to get into controversies about conspiracy stuff. Maybe Bill Gates wasn't a good name. But anyway, you may be friends with some wealthy or important person because you want something out of them. But that's not real love. Real love is when you just want to be friends with that person for the pleasure of that person. So this Sukhaiśvaryottarā mukti, this liberation where someone wants the pleasure of the opulence of the spiritual world, that's rejected by the Prema-sevottarā bhaktas, the devotees who just want to please the Lord. Now, Jiva Goswami has also commented on this verse. He says the first has the uttara. Both phrases have the word uttara. Uttara means a predominant desire. The one has a predominant desire for sukha aishvarya, happiness and power, which are natural in the spiritual world. The second has a predominating desire for service executed by one's natural prema. So then Rupa Goswami goes on to further explain this. We're going to follow along the road. Rupa Goswami gives a very, very beautiful description. He says, Kintu, but, Kintu means but. Kintu premaika madhurja jusa ekantino haro naivangi kurvate jatu muktim pancha vidam api. He says, but the devotees who have this, who ekante, premaika madhurja jusa ekantino, who are very, very one-pointed in their attachment to the Lord, they don't even accept prema-uttara. Even they reject the liberation where it's out of a desire, out of love for the Lord. How do we understand that? Jiva Goswami explains. He says, those, the topmost devotees, they don't even accept this prema-uttara mukti, because there may be a little desire of Sukha and Aishvarya, indicated even in the Prema-seva. But the devotees, they don't desire that, and therefore they reject even Prema-seva uttara mukti, or the liberation which is characterized by loving service. And Jiva Goswami explains further. The first stage of service takes the form of sadhana. And by that, one attains the second stage of service. This is called siddha-rupa. So someone may have this desire, prema-seva uttara mukti. They may be liberated, or at least their desire is prema-seva uttara. They have a predominance of a desire to serve the Lord. And therefore they're practicing some sadhana. And by that sadhana, they attain the second stage. There's two stages of the service. Two type divisions of these four types of liberation. And now again, he's saying there's two divisions of this prema-seva uttara. The first is sadhana. And by that, one attains the second stage, which is called siddha-rupa, or the perfected stage of service. And he says that for the pure devotees, these four types of liberation are secondary items. He says, pratitam matsevaya. They're secondary things. And then Jiva Goswami gives some evidence. And he quotes Srimad Bhagavatam, because we should always quote Srimad Bhagavatam, where Lord Vishnu tells Durvasa Muni, this is from the 9th canto of the Bhagavatam, Durvasa Muni had a big problem. You see, he made an offense to Ambarish Maharaj, and the Lord wasn't very happy about that, so he sent his Sudarshan Chakra to chastise Durvasa Muni, and Durvasa Muni was running like anything all over the place, trying to figure out where to get some freedom. Finally, he approached the Lord, and Lord Vishnu told him, Matsevaya patitam te salokyari chatustayam ne chanti sevaya purnaha kutanyat kala viplutam. He explained to him, first of all, he said, I can't do anything to help you. That's beyond my pay grade. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is saying, sorry, it's beyond my means to help you. He said, you have to go to higher than me. What's higher than me? You have to go to my devotees. Because you offended Ambarish Maharaj. He said, you should understand that my devotees are not different from me. I'm in their heart. They're in my heart. I don't know anything but me. I don't know anything but them. They don't know anything but me. And he speaks this verse then. Matsevaya pratitam te salokyari chatustayam. He speaks about these four types of liberation, beginning with salokya. Salok adi. Adi means etc. To be on the same planet, to have the same form, to have the same opulence, to be an associate of the Lord. He says, my devotees, they're always satisfied with my service, so they're not even interested in this. But all of these things just automatically come by this service. He says, so then what to speak of my devotees? They don't want some stupid happiness of being elevated to the higher planetary systems. So Jiva Goswami further explains that the devotees don't desire the happiness and power attained through these four types of liberation at all. They're completely satisfied because they've got the highest bliss, purna sevaya. They're complete in service to the Lord. So that service may depend on being on the same planet, and so then those items are accepted as part of pure prema. if they don't desire these types of liberation, then how much more so they dislike the temporary rewards of the material world, which he calls kala viplutam. How could they desire such things? So this is also Vishwanath's explanation, as we mentioned again, of this 13th verse in the 29th chapter, Saloka Shashi Samapya, which is a further explanation of the previous verses, where Vishwanath says that by stating this, Lord Kapiladeva is using this kind of logic of Kaimutya Nyaya. What to speak of? They don't even want liberation. What to speak of? All these other things. So I'd like to turn back at this point to something that we spoke on Wednesday, and this is Raghunath Das Goswami's Manasiksha, a very wonderful verse. I want to recite it just because it's so nice to recite Sanskrit. Asadvarta Vesha Vishidamati Sarvasvaharani Kata Mukti Vyagya Nashinu Kila Sarvatma Gilani Api Chatva Lakshmi Patiratimi Tovyom Manoyani Braje Radha Krishno Surati Mani Dotvam Bhajamana. The relevant points here, he's saying, Kata Mukti Vyagra, Nashinu Kilo Sarvatma. Don't even hear it. Don't even hear any discussion about liberation. Right? That'll destroy everything. And even he says, Api Chaktva. Not only that, Api means even, Api Chaktva. Give up. Chaktva means to give up. Lakshmi Pati Ratim, or the rati, the attraction for Lord Narayan, the husband of Lakshmi Devi. So these devotees who have this mood, which Rupa Goswami is speaking about, trying to digest little by little, okay? So he said that of these 4 types of service, one is rejected of the 5 types. There's 2 varieties, Sukhaiśvaryottarā mukti, or one with someone, the uttara, or the predominant desire, is happiness and opulence, and Prema-sevottarā mukti, where the predominant desire is loving service. And then amongst that loving service, again, Rupa Goswami says that one type is when they have some desire for their own pleasure. Prema-seva, it's a desire of love, but it's a little tiny tinge of personal desire there. And such devotees, they begin doing sadhana to get that. And by doing that sadhana, or that practice of bhakti, they attain the 2nd stage, which is Siddha-rupa. Now, in his commentary on this verse of Raghunath Das Goswami from Manasiksha, we're getting really technical, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains a particular type of devotee who's also spoken about a little later by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and that's called the Parama Premattara Bhaktas. So we spoke Rupa Goswami, again, looking back in Jiva Goswami's commentary on Rupa Goswami's words. He says that these devotees who have achieved perfection, the Siddha-rupa, this perfected stage of bhakti, they become akantic. They only want one thing. They only want to serve the Lord. And these devotees are known as Parama. Parama means the topmost. Premattara. They're complete in their prema, their love. Prema Pramattara Bhaktas. So all the exclusive devotees, now this is another category of devotees, Parama Premattara Bhaktas. These are devotees who have, they're very, very focused. There's many, many exclusive devotees who worship different incarnations of the Lord, but Raghunath Das Goswami is indicating the Parama Premattara Bhaktas by saying, Api Chatva Lakshmi Pati Ritim, Iti Vyomanayanim. Don't even think about worshiping Lord Narayan and Lakshmi Devi, because that's going to take you to Vaikuntha, and you really don't want to do that. Now, again, we don't have any problem with that. Not only do we not have a problem with someone worshiping Lord Vishnu, we have no problem with the Baptists and the Methodists and the Christians or the Muslims. We think they're really good guys. It's a really wonderful thing, you're worshiping God. But understand there are different levels And what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give is the topmost level. And that's known as Prema-sevottarā Bhakti. So amongst, Bhaktivinoda says, amongst all the different types of exclusive devotees, of different incarnations of the Lord, the Parama Prema-sevottarā Bhaktis, the devotees who are desirous of the highest prema, their hearts have been stolen by Nandanandan Krishna. They're the topmost devotees. And even if Lord Narayan comes before them and says, I'd like to give you my blessings, they say, yeah, that's okay. Thank you very much. I have something else to do. I've got to serve Krishna. It can't even attract their mind. They're not interested. And although Rupa Goswami, will go on to this, explains that there's no difference between Lord Narayan and Krishna in terms of existential truth, Krishna's form is superior due to Prem Rasa. We'll speak, I think we're going to have 3 sessions on this issue. We'll speak more about that in the next session. He says that rasa, the very nature of rasa itself, reveals the supreme excellence of the form of Krishna. And that ultimate climax, the highest wave, the crest wave of Prema Ras, is only found in the condition known as Mahabhav, which is possessed only by Srimati Radharani. And that type of love, that rasa, the only object for that is Brajendra Nandan Krishna, not Mahanarayan or other incarnations. And therefore, even Lakshmi Devi herself, and maybe we'll discuss this a little later also, she did austerities. Actually, we'll speak a little something about this today. There's a place in Braj known as Bilvavan. And Bilvavan is a very wonderful place. They have a very interesting festival there for an interesting deity. There's a deity there of Lakshmi Devi. Now, traditionally in Braj, although recently there's all kinds of ideas and types of worship which have been introduced to Vrindavan, but traditionally Lakshmi Devi is not worshipped in Vrindavan. Radharani is worshipped in Vrindavan. The gopis of Vrindavan are worshipped there. But there is a deity of Lakshmi Devi. And every year they have a big festival, and all the Brijbasis go there. But it's a different kind of festival. Usually when you have a festival for the deity, you go there and you do a big abhishek, and you offer artik, and you offer prayers, and you sing songs and things to the pleasure of the deity, and you ask for blessings. But this particular festival is not like that. In this festival, the Brijbasis are going there not to ask blessings from Lakshmi Devi. They're going there to give their blessings to Lakshmi Devi. They're going there and telling her, Lakshmi Devi, we feel really sorry for you. Because you see what's happened. Lakshmi Devi's come there to Bilvavan, and for thousands of years, she's been staying there and doing austerities because she wants to enter into Vrindavan. She wants to worship Nandanandan Krishna. She wants his service. She has but there's still a little fragrance of this Sukhaiśvaryottarā, or this desire for personal happiness and opulence, because she's Lakshmi Devi, you can't blame her. She has this abhiman, that the Lord is my husband. And she has this pativrata, this vow, this mentality, this is my husband. And I get the most pleasure from serving him in that way. And she has a hard time thinking about, could I be a gopi and like run around and pick up gobar, cow patties, and put them on the wall and do stuff? I'm Lakshmi Devi. I don't deal with cow patties like that and milk cows and different things. We have the hired help do that. So she has this little bit of abhiman, and because of that, she's not been able to enter into Vrindavan. And therefore, the Brijbasis on that festival every year, they go there and they say, Lakshmi, we're really sorry for you. We feel very bad. And here, we brought you some nice khichdi, some Vrindavan khichdi. You can have that. No opulent food for you. And we bless you. May someday you enter into Vrindavan. In Rupa Goswami's Padyavali, he is quoted a poet whose name was Haridas. Alam Tri Diva Vartaya Kimiti Sarva Bhoma Shriya Viduratara Vartini Bhavatu Moksha Lakshmi Api Kalinda Giri Nandini Tatani Kunja Punjo Dare manoharati kevala navatamala nilam maha. He says, a poet says, I have no use for talking about going to the heavenly planets. What to speak of being in charge of the entire planet? What to speak of being elected the President of the United States? He said, even these words, moksha, liberation, and Lakshmi, to attain the opulent realm of Vaikuntha, offer me no pleasure. Kalinde giri nandini tata nikunja punjodare manoharati kevalam navatamala nilam maha. He says, manoharati kevalam, my mind is just stolen by this navatamala nilam maha, this cluster of bluish brilliance of color, which resembles a tamal tree and graces of Kalindagiri Nandini Tata, the groves situated on the banks of the river Jamuna. So I want to stop there, and we'll continue this discussion later on. I have some wonderful stories about it. But now we'd like to invite the devotees, so please, if you have any comments or anything, we'd like to welcome also Lynn and Garanga and Madhupati Prabhu, our good friend from Budapest. Madhupati Prabhu has a comment question. He says, when one does some devotional service, Krishna reciprocates in the heart, and that causes bliss. Is this motivation? When one does service willy-nilly, the desire to get Krishna's reciprocation is there. Is this contamination? Willy-nilly means you do service in a whimsical kind of way. Here and there, you're not being very focused. Rupa Goswami says such an amazing thing in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He gives a number of examples. He says that for devotees who are Prema-sevottarā, who simply want to serve Krishna with love, and what to speak of the Parama-prematara bhaktas, the devotees who are completely focused, even the devotees who are Prema-sevottarā, those devotees, they find the ecstasy of Asta-satvikara bhava, or the bliss of service, to be an annoyance, a hindrance in their bhakti. And he gives the example, Prabhupada cites this in Nectar of Devotion, that on one occasion, Krishna's chariot driver, Duluka, was fanning Krishna with a chamran, and he was crying in ecstasy. There was so much bliss looking at Krishna doing the service. And he became really annoyed, and he started praying, please, Krishna, make these tears and ecstasy go away. It's impeding my service. So their motivation is not at all, there's no fragrance of a desire for their own happiness, even that spiritual ecstasy. They simply, wholly and solely want to please Krishna. So if someone does service in a willy-nilly way, that's some contamination. But Jiva Goswami assures us, you hear about this. Hear about these two divisions of the four types of liberation. This Sukhaiśvaryottarā mukti, or liberation where someone has this desire for sukha and aishvaryas and happiness and opulence, and the superiority of Prema-sevottarā mukti, where someone wants to serve the Lord out of love. And if you understand that, then you begin to do sadhana. This is a motivation for our sadhana. Our goal is raganuga bhakti. We want to have that pure love where we're just attracted by Krishna. And so we begin by doing some vaidhi sadhana. And then after some time, Jiva Goswami says that this purity of heart will come. And then we won't have any desire for even a fragrance of pleasure for ourselves. So I want to welcome also Roma and Chandradvaita Das. Roma Wani comments, so accepting his will is also a way to serve him. There's no question of service without understanding the will of the master. If we try to serve the master by our own speculation, oh Prabhuji, I want to cook for you. I like pakoras very much, and I am sure you also like pakoras because I like pakoras. but you don't understand. For me, I have no gallbladder. I can't digest precordius. I can't go there. And if you give me that, I'm going to have big, big problems for a long time. It's not service. Service means we should understand the mentality of the person we want to serve. Subhal Prabhu Hare Krishna Madhupati says, I mean by willy-nilly that it's there even if you don't want it. It naturally arises. We can say that because it's the natural condition of the heart. It's a natural condition of a living entity. But it's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. What is it? Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadyakavu Noin Shravanadi Sudha Chitte Koye Doi. Very interesting verse with a very interesting commentary by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. The verse says that Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema, that our constitutional position is to have love of God. And Sadyakavu Noi, literally what the verse is saying, although I think our translation doesn't give us, but literally what it's saying if you study the word meanings, is Sadyakavu Noi. You're not going to get that prema by doing sadhana. So how do I get it? The next line says, Shravanadi. Adi means etc. And Shravan means to hear. When you say Shravanadi, it's indirectly referring to Navavidi Bhakti, or the 9 practices of sadhana bhakti, which were just rejected. Beginning with Shravanam and Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, etc. Shravanadi, Suddha Chitti, then your heart becomes purified, Kodaye Udoy. Udoy means to rise, like the rising of the sun. So what is the meaning of that? It sounds contradictory. The first line says that it's a natural position there within the heart, and you can't get it by sadhana. And the next line you say Shravanadi, which means by doing sadhana. Hello, I'm confused. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati explains that when he says Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadyakavu Noi, it means that you may do sadhana for millions of lifetimes and you won't get it. You won't get nothing if you do it on your own. But if you do that sadhana for the pleasure of Guru, and Srila Prabhupada comments on this indirectly in the beginning of Nectar of Devotion, he says that one cannot begin performing devotional service until they're initiated by Guru. That's the beginning. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, says that the senses engage in the sense objects. He says that for someone who's doing bhakti on their own, it's just the senses engaged in the sense. No, it's not a verse, it's a Sanskrit commentary. It's the senses engaged in the sense objects. Indriya Vyapara. Thank you. She hears me quote that all the time. Just slip me. It's just Indriya Vyapara, that your senses engaged in the sense objects. Your senses means Panchagyan Indriya, the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses. All they can perceive is what's called Panchatan Matra. If you want to speak about Sankhya philosophy, there's a Sankhya philosophy. Your 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, all they can perceive is Panchatan Matra, the 5 different elements in this world. They cannot perceive bhakti. And therefore the Padma Purana says, Atashu Krishna Nama Vinabhavid Graimindriya, that with your senses you can't perceive the holy name. But Sevanmukhi Jivado, when you begin to render service with the tongue, hello, the tongue is one of the senses, we're confused again. When we begin to render service to Guru with the tongue, by repeating what he's given us, we're doing the same thing. You may be doing, you may be practicing some sadhana before initiation. That's very good. It was the first question I ever asked our Guru Maharaj when I came to see him in Vancouver, Canada in 1993. I asked him, Maharaj, I said, what's the difference between chanting before initiation and chanting after initiation? He became very pleased. And he said, if you chant before initiation, you can get dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. It's really good. But you can't get prem bhakti. And those 4 types of things are considered to be kaitava chatustoy, the 4 types of cheating, in comparison to Panchama Purushartha, the 5th and highest goal, which is Krishna Prema. So if we want that Prema, now let's go back to the Chaitanya Charitamrita verse, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabumoy Shravanati Siddha Chitti Kori Udoy, that you can't get this just on your own. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says, when you practice that sadhana for the pleasure of Guru, Tate Krishna Bhakti Kori Guru Sevan, when you practice this Krishna Bhakti as your Guru Seva, then this Prema Kori Udoy, then this thing arises. So anybody else has any reflections, they can share them now. Sachitanaya Prabhu, do you have anything you want to share? Shampriya, do you have anything? No? Okay, Anapayani Radha, she started coming again to class. She's here today with us, and she has a comment, which no doubt is very wise, but she's going to have to speak very, very loud. Okay?
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really nice to hear how devotees are not going anywhere, even directly to the Lord, if there is no service to the Lord. So it's really important thing. It's remind me of one writing of my Guru Maharaj, where he speaks about different types of people. For example, there are groups of people who understood that the love of God is the most. Okay, so there are people who understood that love of God is the most important thing.
Okay, just hold on 1 second. I know it's hard for devotees to hear what she's saying. We're going to put her on screen. You can see her smiling face, because you can read her lips a little bit. It helps.
Okay. And but some of them, they're expecting love from God, but some small group of people, they want to give this love to the Lord. And he gives the example of peacocks who are dancing before the rain, and they are happy not because of the rain, but they're happy because of the anticipation of the rain, if it's accurate, for taste. Yeah, and this is our mood, and it's reminding me this immediately. It's so beautiful. We just recently read it with my mom. That's why.
Okay.
And I have a question. Actually, it's.
Okay. I think that's a beautiful example of peacock. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope somebody will translate it into English. It's really beautiful not poetry, but writing. And you quoted a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, I guess. Yeah, and you said that if somebody gets just one glance of Mahaprabhu, this material world becomes blissful place. But I didn't understand the meaning of this. Can you kind of explain this?
So what does it mean? Just, okay, Mr. Trump gets Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's sidelong glance, and there's no longer an anxiety about Biden, or the election or anything like that. No, it doesn't mean that. But that sidelong glance has a symptom. When you get that sidelong glance, it means you're not interested in anything else. It means you've gotten the mercy of Mahaprabhu. And the symptom of that is you have divine love. Gauranga's commenting, he can't hear. Okay, and then Gauranga's also commenting, questioning, what is initiation, first or second? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Well, in our line, we have Diksha and we have Siksha. We have first initiation, we have second initiation. That first initiation, some people say it's only found amongst the followers of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, but that's not true. In the book Prema Vilas, we hear about how Narottam Das Thakur, he sometimes gave Nam initiation to certain devotees, and then later on, after they began chanting, he gave them second initiation. Generally, it's classically considered that initiation means Diksha. It means second initiation with Gayatri mantra. But if we say that, then we're putting more stress on that ritual, on that mantra than the relationship with the Guru. The most important thing Srila Bhaktisiddhanta taught us is the relationship that we have with the conception, with the heart of our previous acharyas. And my Guru Maharaj once was asked a question, which is more prominent, the Siksha Guru or the Diksha Guru? He answered in such a beautiful way. He said, whoever occupies your heart. that person. So really that's what initiation is all about. And you may be initiated in one mantra or another mantra. You may have this kind of ceremony or that kind of ceremony. You may get this kind of name or that kind of name. That's not the important quality. What's important, Krishna says in the Adi Purana to Arjuna, Ye me bhakta jana partana me bhakta sate jana mad bhaktanam chiye bhakta ste me bhakta tamomata. Someone who says my devotee, they're my devotee, Krishna says, they're not my devotee. I have no idea who they are. He says, but the devotee of my devotee is my real devotee. So really that initiation means we accept shelter, ashraya. My Guru Maharaj spoke about this. He said that Gurudev is not just mantra data or the giver of mantra, but he's ashraya data. He's giving us shelter. And that's the symptom of real initiation. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, Hare Krishna, nice to see you. Panchajanya Prabhu's made some comment. The translation of Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem verse you quoted sounds like Prem is part of the Swarupa of the Jiva being dormant in the heart of every Jiva. If that's the case, how is this so? Because Prem is the internal potency and Jiva is the Tatastha Shakti. Are we saying that the conditioned Jiva is eternally endowed with internal potency? A good question. So it's part of the inherent propensity. We were speaking about this a few days ago amongst ourselves here, and we gave an example of a baby lion. You may separate that baby cub, we could call it, that lion from its mother at the time of birth, and turn it over to some sheep. And the baby lion grows up making funny sounds and hanging out with sheep and eating grass and drinking sheep milk from his mother's sheep and thinking, I'm a sheep. But you can point to that lion who's been a pure vegetarian his whole life, and that baby lion, and you can say he's a meat eater. Although he's never eaten meat, the propensity is there. This is my humble understanding of this topic. It's a controversial topic, but as is pointed out by Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Jaiva Dharma, in one sense it's really not an important discussion, because in our conditioned state we can't understand what it is to be liberated and what our swarup is, what it's like to love God. But what we do understand, whether that's inherent or whether it's dormant, it's something to be awoken, it's something to be gained. There's a big controversy about this. I don't want to enter into that controversy because for me, what's very crystal clear is the means to go about it, the sadhana. And that's 5 aspects. Nam Kirtan, Bhagavat Shravan, chanting the holy name, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, associating with the devotees, living in the Dham, doing deity worship. These 5 things are the most 5 important principles of sadhana that Rupa Goswami gives in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And if someone performs these 5 things, then those questions will naturally be answered. Just like we give an example of a young boy a young child is wanting to understand how they got there, wanting to understand, where did they come from? The parents, what do they say to a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old child who's asking them, how did I get here? You make up some story, you tell them a big bird brought you, or I found you under a rock, or something like that. But it's natural when that child grows up, they can understand something about sex life, they can understand how they came. But as a tiny child, they can't understand. So similarly, Bhaktivinoda says that when we grow up, we'll naturally understand this. Gauranga was commented, so it would mean that if one takes shelter of a Siksha Guru without formal ritual, he's still considered, quote, initiated. Srila Prabhupada, in a purport to Madhya Lila, chapter 25, I think it's text 108, as I recall, he quotes a verse in the Dikshitasya Vomaru, that if you don't take Diksha, you may take birth as an animal. That Diksha is an important thing. If you're taking shelter of a Siksha Guru, and he's a bona fide Siksha Guru, then he's going to tell you should also take initiation. You should also take mantra. That's an important part of it. Okay? So Sachitananda, do you want to comment anything? No? Okay, so I want to thank everybody very much for taking part. This is the most fun we have all day long. Get to come together and associate with devotees by hearing and chanting Srimad Bhagavatam. It gives us some hope and some life. And we'll be back again on Sunday at the same time, the same place. Grandhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Vanchakalpatarubhascha